No brunch menu is complete without my favorite food group of all, bread. At least it's one of my 70 different food groups. I love food, have I mentioned? Bagels are a classic brunch food, so I'm gonna make them super sweet and luscious with a yummy glaze over the top. You're not gonna know what hit you with these. They are incredible. So I've got mini bagels and I am making a cream cheese mixture. I was just kind of getting the cream cheese started, wanted to soften it a little bit. So I'm gonna sweeten up the cream cheese with a couple of tablespoons of maple syrup. That is awfully sweet indeed. And then vanilla bean paste. I'm just gonna pour in about a tablespoon or so. This stuff is a miracle. The flavor is incredible, and you get these little flecks of vanilla bean all throughout whatever you add it to. I always need to have something really sweet and decadent on any sort of brunch buffet, but I love these because they're sort of a cross between cinnamon toast and sticky buns, just amazing. All right, I got all of this mixed together. So now I'm gonna spread this mixture on these mini bagels. So I'll get a good amount on a knife and just smear it all over the surface. And you wanna be generous. This is no time to practice restraint. All right, one bagel half done. Now I'm gonna do the same thing to the rest. Okay, they're all spread. Right now they kind of look like just traditional bagels with cream cheese. But there is nothing traditional about this. I'm gonna make a streusel topping for these bagels, and I'm just gonna tell you, they send these over the top. So I've got some rolled oats and brown sugar, flour, and pecans. This is kind of a classic streusel mixture, and I'll break that up real quick and then add some cinnamon and baking powder, and then a good pinch of salt. I really like that saltiness in any sort of sweet streusel topping. So I wanna make sure this is all mixed together. This would go great on apple pie or anything that needs a streusel topping, even muffins. All right, now I have a little skillet of melted butter, and it is salted butter as well, so it's got a little of that yummy salt that I like. And I'm stirring gradually as I drizzle it in. I don't want it to go in quickly because it'll form kind of a big clump, and I want it to be more evenly distributed and not get too wet. All right, looks great. So now I'll just kind of fold and stir until it all just barely comes together. Oh, it smells so good. And now that is something about these bagels that is great for brunch. You want to bake them pretty close to when the guests get to your house because the smell is incredible. It's kind of like you're burning a cinnamon roll candle or something. Really tasty. Okay, now the streusel goes on top of the bagels. And you can use a scoop if you want, but I'm just gonna use my fingers, which is my favorite tool sometimes. And I'm just gonna do a little mound on each bagel. And if a little streusel gets on the sheet pan, that is just fine. And I like the mini bagels because you don't wind up with just a huge helping for each person. And that's the thing about brunch buffets or any buffet. You want everything to be, not overwhelmingly huge, and then everybody can serve themselves an assortment and it'll all still fit on the plate. These are all ready to go in the oven. So I'm gonna bake them at 350 degrees for about 20 minutes until they're bubbly, caramelized, and magical. A lot of very good things happened in that oven. The streusel topping got a little bit golden on top, and the cream cheese got nice and soft. So first things first, I'm gonna get all the bagels onto the platter. So they are 99% perfect. I just need to drizzle on this yummy glaze, and all it is powdered sugar, heavy cream, and a pinch of salt to offset all the sweetness. So I'll just use the fork and let it kind of fall naturally onto the bagel, and no need to be shy with this. Really drizzle it on. This is part of what's so magical about these. And honestly, this is one of those things where it's like, is this really a breakfast food? Or is this a decadent dessert? All right, one more. Basically, you want to drizzle until your countertop is a mess like mine is. Gotta go back to the first one. I was being shy there on the first one.
For a whimsical side to our Thanksgiving table, I'm making my tahini cinnamon sweet potatoes with toasted meringue. They're rich and indulgent and nicely balanced because the tahini helps cut all the sweetness. To start, I've got 5 roasted sweet potatoes, and I'm gonna scoop out all of the flesh. So I'm basically making twice baked sweet potatoes, which I'm really excited about because when you give them that second bake, they get some nice crispy edges and a lot more textural excitement than the typical sweet potato casserole, which is sometimes just too mush on mush for me. No offense, sweet potato casserole. So I'm using the flesh from all 10 of the sweet potato halves, but I'm only actually gonna build 8, and that's just so I have enough filling to make it look mounded and bountiful, so I can snack on the skin of the other 2. Okay, got my boats here. I'm gonna season them with salt and pepper, just so that there's ample seasoning all throughout. Potatoes do love their salt. Now into my filling, I'll pour in some tahini, which is a smooth sesame paste. And tahini fits in so seamlessly with the flavor profiles of Thanksgiving, namely cinnamon and sweet potatoes. A few tablespoons of maple syrup. Not too much, but just enough to give it life. 2 tablespoons of softened butter, some kosher salt, and cinnamon and ginger. And I'll mash this up. I love how simple all of these flavors are. When they come together, they make some major magic. Okay, I would really like to taste this filling. Yeah. It's sweet and nutty and really creamy. Wow, I could eat that whole bowl, but I'm not. I have to fill up my sweet potato boats. So I'll just pile on some of the filling. These will be nice individual servings. I'm just looking for a nice, voluptuous mound. Just like that. So I'll keep on filling these, and then I'm gonna stick them back in the oven at 425 for 10 to 15 minutes. And while they get golden and crisp, I'll make my meringue topping. This is basically a quick version of marshmallow cream. It's gonna be sweet and cloud-like on top of the sweet potatoes. I'm starting with 2 large pasteurized egg whites, and I'll beat these up and allow them to get foamy. And sprinkle in a 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar, which will help stabilize the egg whites. I'll drizzle in 1/3 cup of light corn syrup and 1/3 cup of powdered sugar, a good pinch of salt, and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. I'm gonna continue to beat this until the mixture reaches stiff peaks. This is looking good. So fluffy. Oh yeah. That's a stiff peak. I'll scoop this into my piping bag, fit it with a round tip. Okay, my meringue's ready. Let me check on my potatoes. Oh, they smell so sweet and cinnamony, and I am loving the color that they've gotten. They're gonna have some nice crispy bits. Okay, I'll take my meringue and just pipe it on, and I'm gonna do a fun squiggle. When else can you put a pile of marshmallow on your plate and call it dinner? It looks like a cartoon potato. I'll just keep on piping. Now, if that wasn't satisfying enough, I'm gonna torch them. Dun, da, da, da. If you don't have a propane torch, you could definitely broil these, but using these guys allows you to see the browning in real time. Is that what ASMR is? I don't know. Here I go. Oh, that's a good one. Smells like s'mores. Ha! I mean, those are some supermodel sweet potatoes.
making cinnamon baked French toast, and it's a great breakfast for a bunch of girls. It's really easy to make. It's just a one-dish thing to throw together and stick in the oven. I've got a loaf of sourdough bread, and I'm just tearing it into pieces. All right, now I'll make the egg mixture. I have 8 eggs in a bowl, and I'm gonna add 2 cups of whole milk and just a half a cup of heavy cream. Just adds a little richness without making it too heavy. And then for a little sweetness, half a cup of sugar, and a 1/4 cup of packed brown sugar. The brown sugar just adds a nice richness to it. And the essential ingredient, a couple of tablespoons of vanilla extract. I love vanilla extract, can you tell? All right, now I'll just whisk this together. Oh, it smells like vanilla. And then I just pour this over the torn bread pieces. All right, yummy, yummy. Now I'm gonna make a topping for the baked French toast, and it's gonna give it a little extra sweetness, a little bit of crunch on top. I'm starting with half a cup of flour, and then I'll add half a cup of packed brown sugar. I'll add a teaspoon of cinnamon, and then some grated nutmeg. Oh, it smells so good, yummy. And then finally, a little bit of salt. Now I'll mix that together just a bit. And now I have a stick of very cold butter. And then I'll use my pastry cutter to just blend this together. You want the butter to be cold so the end result will sort of be little pebbles. All right, this is all combined. Now I'll just pour this mixture over the torn bread pieces. Now this needs to bake for about an hour at 350. While this is in the oven, I'm gonna go get a little gardening done.
Now I got some frozen peaches that have, kind of thawed out a little bit. I'm getting these into the mix here. And what I'm gonna do is hit them with a little brown sugar and some regular white sugar. So look at those. Let's get a little bit of regular sugar in, about a 1/4 cup. And we'll get a little brown sugar in. So you get some of that nice kind of rich, deep molasses flavor. There we go. And a little bit of flour to kind of bind it together a bit. We're also going to be hitting some cornstarch in there. The flour kind of gets a little thick and a little opaque where the cornstarch kind of runs a little bit more clear. Just get a little flour. And get a little lemon juice. And get some water in there too. So a little lemon juice goes down. Get a little water in here. Spoon, and where's my cornstarch? Okay, there we go. Kind of mix that up a little bit. Make it not quite a slurry, because that's not a ton of cornstarch. All right, now before I mix that in, I'm gonna get a little cinnamon down. There we go. Okay, so take this, kind of pour it around. Now this is gonna be the base of it. We got sugar, we got flour. This all right here could be made, we could be making peach pie for all I know. So he's gonna get poured in here. First things first, let's get in a little bit of oats. Maybe 3/4 of a cup. We'll get in some flour. There we go. Okay. We'll get in some brown sugar. Again, kind of the same, some of the same sweeteners that we had on the mix with the peaches. A little bit of both. And a little bit of white sugar. Same thing, about a 1/4 cup on that. I was dragging a bit there. Okay, gonna give a little pinch of salt into this piece. There we go. A little bit of cinnamon hiding there. You see, when I bake at home, I get everything out that I own. Okay, a little bit of cinnamon going downtown. Here we are. And then here's the kicker, a little fresh nutmeg. Get that. Got a zester, a little microplane here. And this, especially the fresh nutmeg, really makes it work. About a 1/4 teaspoon on that. There we are. All right. Now we get in some almonds. Toasting these would also be a nice little move to make. There we go. And we're gonna hit it with some cranberries. You know what, I'm kind of looking at this. I'm looking at the size of the dish. I'm gonna up my oats just a little bit. Just give a little bit more, and I'm just gonna hit a touch more flour in there too. Because depending on the size pan, when you're using a smaller dish, you don't have as much surface area to cover. I'm just gonna hit a little bit more in there. Now, here comes the key. I gotta debling for this. This is the key. Having a little room temperature butter that's been softened, and we're gonna kind of mix this in here. I'll just kind of break it up a little bit. Now we're gonna work this into here. Now, what it's gonna do? Well, it's gonna work as a little bit of a binder, but it's also gonna kind of melt and help crisp things up. All right, here we go. Go down with some of this. All right. Okay, here we go, into the oven. It's at 450. I'm just gonna pop it in there right now at the 450. It's smoking hot, but what I'm gonna do is drop it down to 350. It'll still have some of that residual temperature. Now check this out. The peaches are cooked, kind of make a nice caramel sauce around it, and I got some crunchy topping, but the topping that's down into the peaches is a little bit soggy. So now that I want the crunch, I want extra crunch, I'm gonna take the rest of the crunchy topping and put it on top. This will sit on the existing crunchy topping, and I'll have lots of extra crunchy topping. Okay, that goes back in, a few more minutes, crunch that top up. Peaches tossed with cinnamon and sugar, then baked under a comfy blanket of oats, slivered almonds, dried cranberries, a little brown sugar. Oh, ain't she a peach?
I love the holidays and I love brunch, so I'm making some cinnamon rolls that are perfect for both. Subscribe to Food Network for more recipes. Hi, I'm Katie Lee, and right now I'm eating cinnamon rolls and my mom's holiday fruit salad. Let's get started with these. In the bowl of my mixer, I've got my yeast blooming in here. So it's a packet of yeast, some warm water, and a little bit of sugar. You want it to be nice and thick and bubbly like this. If it's not, start over. It means your yeast probably isn't good, or maybe your water was too hot. Okay, so now I'm gonna start with some sugar, an egg, a little bit of vegetable oil, and some salt. Whisk all of this together until it's nice and combined. So I've got cold water in here, and I'm adding to it an equal amount of boiling water. Why can't you just put warm water in it? I've tried it, doesn't work the same. Now slowly whisk this in. I love cinnamon rolls during the holidays because that cinnamon, it just says to me it's time to celebrate. They're for special occasions. So I'm gonna take this and mix it right into my yeast mixture. And give that a nice little stir. Gus, what do you think of Mommy's nightgown? You like it? We stay in our pajamas all day during the holidays. Now I'm gonna add in my flour slowly while the mixer is on. Woo, woo! Happy holidays. Gus, you got something to clean up over here, pal. All right, so after it comes together, make it into a nice little ball here. Cover it with plastic wrap. This goes into the fridge for 3 hours or overnight. I love making homemade bread. I'm gonna just put some flour down so that it doesn't stick. Gus, you gonna be on vacuum duty? Look at that, look at the stretch to it. A little bit more flour on top of it. And I'm gonna flour my rolling pin and then just start to go. So I'm just gonna make a big rectangle. You'll probably need to turn it a couple times and give it a stretch. And I'm doing this about 20 by 10 inches. And I'm gonna have it so that the long end faces me. Let's get started building our cinnamon rolls. So I've got some sugar here and just adding to it some cinnamon. That's it. Now, melted butter, just pour it over and then use a pastry brush to get it evenly coated. Now let's sprinkle it with the cinnamon sugar mixture. I just kind of go back and forth over the dough. Okay, Now it's time to roll it up and go from the long side. And now I'm gonna cut these into the cinnamon rolls. Put these in face up and leave them with enough space so that they can rise again. Let's brush the top of each one with a little bit more melted butter. I'm gonna cover these up. They're gonna go into a warm place to rise until they double in size for about an hour and a half. Then they're gonna go into the oven, 350 for about 45 minutes. I'll just start over.
Here we go. Take one, Mark.
Ready? Yep. Okay. And now, the real star of the show, those cinnamon rolls. I made a glaze with just milk and powdered sugar. This is super simple. Let's just pour it all on. Ryan?
Oh, yeah. I've been waiting for this moment since last night.
Cinnamon roll time.
Oh my God, these look so good.
I just put some milk in a saucepan with vegetable oil and sugar. Then I stirred it together and heated it up until it was really hot but not quite boiling. Then I removed the pan from the heat and let it cool a bit. Then I sprinkled on some active dry yeast and let it sit for about 5 minutes. Then I stirred in pumpkin puree and just let it sit. Then it was on to the dry ingredients. Now in a separate bowl, I added flour, ground cinnamon, ground nutmeg, and ground ginger. Then I stirred it all together and sprinkled it into the saucepan. When everything was all stirred together, I covered the saucepan with a towel and set it aside in a warm place to rise for about an hour. And when it was all risen, it was time to move on to stage 2. Oh, look at that dough. It is so bubbly and puffy. It pretty much doubled in size. Now I'm just gonna finish it off and add half a cup of more flour, a generous ½ teaspoon of baking powder, a scant ½ teaspoon of baking soda, and ½ teaspoon of salt. And then I'll just stir this addition of the dry ingredients into this puffy dough. Without this final addition of flour, the dough would be way too sticky. So it's nice to give it a chance to rise and then finish it off with just a little more flour. Okay, I've got it pressed into a rough rectangle shape. I'll give it one more sprinkle of flour, and then I'll use the rolling pin to roll it into a nice big rectangle. Now I have a stick of melted butter, and I'll just drizzle it all over the dough. It's all covered in melted butter. So now I need to sprinkle on the sugar and spice. And boy, is it nice. It's just white sugar, brown sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, and ground ginger all mixed together. Okay, now this just gets sprinkled all over the butter. I want to do it in a nice even coating. Okay, now I have a whole bunch of finely chopped pecans, and I'll just sprinkle those all over. Okay, so now it's just about rolling them up. I use a bit of a typewriter motion, going back and forth with my fingers, rolling the dough toward me tightly so it's nice and neat. The seam gets pinched closed, and the trick is to turn the roll over so the seam is facing down. Then it gets cut into ½ slices, which go into buttered pans. This amount of dough makes 3 pans, 2 for Pastor Ken and 1 for my family. Then after the rolls have risen for about 20 minutes, it's time to bake them. They go into a 375-degree oven for 15 to 18 minutes. While the rolls finish baking, I'm gonna make a delicious frosting to go over the top. Now it starts with 8 ounces of cream cheese. Now along with the cream cheese, it's powdered sugar, whole milk, melted butter, a pinch of salt, and it all gets beaten together until it's nice and smooth. I always like to ice cinnamon rolls right when they come out of the oven. When they're nice and warm, they just suck up all that beautiful, beautiful icing. I'll get a big blob right in the middle of each one. Oh, that was a mighty big blob right there. It does look like a lot of icing, but as the rolls sit, it's gonna settle down into the crevices. Oh, man. Now I'll just grab some of the chopped pecans and sprinkle them all over the frosting.
First, I need 12 tablespoons of unsalted butter. That's 1½ sticks. 1/3 cup of brown sugar. I use light brown sugar. It's really important that the butter be room temperature so you can mix it. Just mix those together. Okay, that's that. These are all made in muffin pans. So I'm just gonna put like a tablespoon in the bottom of each cup. These are actually done upside down. So I'm putting the brown sugar and pecans and butter in the bottom, and then the pastry in the top. And then when they're done, I'm gonna dump them out and they'll be right side up. So that's the butter and sugar. And now I'm gonna put some pecans on the top of each one. Okay, that's the topping. Now for the puff pastry. When I thought of making this with puff pastry, I was hoping it was gonna be as good as the original. And what I found out is it's even better. You buy frozen puff pastry in the grocery store, or especially a food store. What I do is I defrost it overnight in the refrigerator. You wanna keep it really cold, because it's important that the butter stay really cold in the sheets of puff pastry. So, put this on a board, a little bit of flour so it doesn't stick. No point in making it if it sticks to the board or the counter. So I'm just gonna unfold this. Perfect. A little bit of melted butter, brush on the pastry. The key to this is really keeping it very cold, because when the heat of the oven hits the butter and the pastry, it causes steam to rise, and that's actually what makes it light and flaky. Okay. Need 1/3 cup of brown sugar. Sort of pack it lightly. And I'm gonna leave a little border, like 1.5 inches around the outside, and then just distribute the brown sugar around so it's even. Okay, so that's the brown sugar. And 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. So just distribute it evenly. Again, leaving it 1.5 inch border. And then next part is raisins, 1/2 cup of raisins. That should be about 1/2 cup. Now, what I'm gonna do is roll it up. You wanna roll it up pretty tightly, but not press on it. You wanna just roll it up snugly. And that's why the flour is important, because you just don't want it sticking to the board. And this is the reason you leave the edge. So the butter will make the puff pastry stick at the edge. I'm gonna cut off the ends, just so that you don't have a ragged edge. I'm gonna cut it in half, and then cut each half in thirds. Okay, and then these are just gonna go right into these pans with the brown sugar and butter and pecans. Just press them lightly. Okay, into the oven, 400 degrees for about 30 minutes until the pastry is firm to the touch and the butter and brown sugar and pecans are caramelized.
I'm making one of our favorite recipes, pumpkin pie, which is rich and custardy and has incredible depth of flavor because I make a cooked filling and then I put it into a pie crust and bake and decorate with fresh whipped cream. So to start, I'll take my 1 can of pumpkin and I'm gonna add it to a saucepan. I'm gonna add 1/3 cup each of granulated sugar and brown sugar, and 1/4 cup of maple syrup for my 3rd type of sugar, and that's just gonna mean more dimension of flavor. I'll season with a teaspoon of salt. And now I'm gonna cook this, stirring until it's glossy and thickened, and that's gonna allow the sugars to melt and caramelize. This is smelling really good. I'm gonna grab my heavy cream and milk. I'll add 3/4 cup of each of these. And one thing that I find so uniquely delicious about this pie is that you can actually taste the milky richness of it. And I'm using the combo so that it's really rich, but not overly rich. I'm gonna switch to a whisk now so I can whisk it all in. And now I'm just gonna heat this until the milk gets steamy. I don't wanna bring it to a boil and scald the milk. This is looking so creamy already. As this heats up, I'm gonna crack in my eggs. I've got 3 whole eggs and 2 egg yolks for added richness. So now anytime you want to incorporate eggs into a hot mixture like this, you've got to temper them, and that means warming them up gradually. Because if I were to just crack them in, they would scramble and the texture would not be smooth. I'm gonna grab a ladle. This always takes some coordination, but I'm gonna add a little bit of the hot mixture as I'm whisking the eggs. And this is essentially gonna gradually cook them while maintaining their smooth texture. My egg mixture is warm to the touch, and that's how I know it's ready to be added back into the pot. So with one hand, I'll drizzle it in, and with the other hand, I'm gonna continue to whisk. Perfect. I'm gonna continue to cook this while it thickens, and in the meantime, I'll grab my spices. I've got cinnamon and nutmeg, and I'm pulling out the fancy vanilla beans. Oh, they smell so good. So I'm gonna slice it in half and just scrape out the pods. And I'm gonna use the blunt end of my knife to scrape them out. And this is gonna add fancy vanilla flavor and really pretty speckles. Okay, I'll scrape this into the filling. A little really goes a long way. And then I don't like to add too many spices, just enough to enhance the pumpkin flavor. So half a teaspoon of cinnamon and a 1/4 teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg. I'll whisk this in. I love being able to see the speckles of the spices and the vanilla bean. My filling is done. I'll grab my crust, which is blind baking in the oven. This is just my go-to pie crust. Flour, sugar, and salt, blended with cold butter, and then formed into a dough with a little apple cider vinegar and ice water. I rolled it out and crimped the edges. This is beautiful. I'm gonna taste the filling before I add it in, just in case I wanna make any adjustments. Yum. There are so many things going on in that filling, and they all just mesh together in the most beautiful way. I'm gonna pour this into the crust, and I'm gonna bake this at 375 degrees for 30 to 40 minutes until the outside is set, but the center is still a little jiggly. That's how you prevent it from cracking. Oh yes, this is perfectly done. It's set around the outside, but it's still a little soft on the inside. I'm gonna let this cool completely, decorate with fresh whipped cream and cinnamon, and then it is gonna be the sweet star of the show.
Ree's cinnamon rolls are a big deal. Her batch makes about 7 trays of rolls, enough to feed an entire ranch.
And then I'll throw in a cup of sugar, and you can stir that in.
You can tell it's a family recipe because Ree knows it by heart, and she improvises along the way.
And I'm not careful when I measure. Joy the baker's here, and I'm like.
Ree uses a technique I've never tried before. She mixes all her ingredients in a Dutch oven and uses that for proofing. Proofing is when you allow the yeasted dough to rise. We cover the dough for an hour, and when it's done,
Let's see what it is.
the dough is risen and it's ready to be rolled.
It smells so good, like
It does.
yeasty.
It's so yeasty.
I love it.
So now I'm going to add another cup of flour,
Oh.
a heaping teaspoon of baking powder,
Okay.
and a scant teaspoon of baking soda.
Science.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and then we need a tablespoon of salt.
The next step is to take half of the dough out of the pot and roll it out. And you know there's going to be butter. This is getting good.
Cup of sugar. Sprinkle until a little bit of sugar is standing on the surface. So most of it has absorbed, and then the cinnamon goes right on. Of course, cinnamon, you don't want to go overboard.
Oops, overboard? We're nowhere near overboard.
Wait. Before we finish, I brought some ingredients from California.
Is it sushi?
Pistachios and oranges. And then if we're totally crazy, we could chop some dark chocolate inside too.
I've always thought we were really crazy.
I've always thought we were
I'm
crazy
in favor
too.
of that.
This is exactly why we're friends, because we know that you can never have too much of a good thing.
Oh my gosh.
I know. What have we done?
We're gonna need to go to confession after this for sure.
And then Ree shows me how to roll it up in a new way. Typewriter style?
I just make these little movements with my fingers and just roll it as
It is
tightly.
sort of a typewriter move.
Yeah, and then it's cling, and then you go back the other direction.
Once the rolls are ready, they are cut into thick slices and then it's off to the oven. While they're baking, we whip up a vanilla orange glaze to top the warm rolls.
Oh, Joy the baker.
Oh my goodness.
These lips. Absolutely gorgeous. Look at the pistachios.
They're beautiful, and the chocolate is all melty.
There's no shying away from this glaze. We're just gonna tip this bowl. And finally, they're ready to eat.
Cheers.
Cheers! These are so delicious.
That might be the best variation I've ever tasted. I mean,
Really?
the chocolate The orange zest, perfectly representative of your fine steak.
I love it. And we smash it all together.
Well, I hate to tell you this, Joy, but you're never leaving.
We started with some brown butter, and I'm gonna add about a half a cup of dark brown sugar. And then a couple of teaspoons of cinnamon. Whisk this together. This is what we're gonna actually pipe into our pancakes when we put them in the pan. I'm gonna add about a quarter cup of water. It's gonna get a little thick, a little syrupy, and the cinnamon is cooking. It smells great here. I wanna keep stirring it because I don't want the cinnamon to clump up, or the sugar. And a couple of tablespoons of cream. And you really have to let this cool to use it. Smells good though. Okay, so we have a little bit of warm maple syrup. I'm gonna pour it right over some softened cream cheese. This is gonna create our cream cheese glaze or frosting, basically what you get on top of a cinnamon bun. And this you wanna whisk pretty vigorously so it gets nice and smooth. Okay, let's make some pancakes. Let's start with 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. You know, I always have my recipes written down for batters and doughs, but you don't have to write them down, because all you need to do is go to foodnetwork.com/brunch, and the recipes are right there for you. 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 3 tablespoons of sugar, a good pinch of salt. Mix these together, and then we're gonna get to our wet ingredients. A couple of eggs. One and a half cups of buttermilk. You could use regular milk, but I love the flavor of buttermilk, and also I think buttermilk makes for a more tender pancake. A little bit of vanilla extract. 3 tablespoons of melted butter. The melted butter is gonna help make the pancakes a little golden brown on the outside. Now we're just going to fold the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients just until it forms a batter. Don't want to overmix them. Pancakes make me very happy. Such a good thing. Who doesn't like pancakes? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get my brown sugar and cinnamon mixture and put it into a pastry bag so that when I put my pancakes into the pan, I can actually swirl it right into the middle of the pancake. So you can see it's kind of thickened up as it's cooled. Lots of delicious goodness in here. Cinnamon, brown butter, brown sugar, and a little cream. Okay. Let's start making some pancakes. I'm gonna get some butter going in my pan. So we're gonna put some pancake batter right into the pan. And I'm gonna spread a little bit. Those cook for a second. I'm gonna take our cinnamon and brown sugar swirl and just swirl it right into the middle. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna let the pancakes cook on one side, get them nice and crusty, and then we'll flip them over really quickly on the swirl side down, just to kind of cook the top of it. But for the most part, you're gonna cook them on one side, say like 80% on one side, flip them over for another 20% of the time, and then we'll be done. I slowed down the heat a little bit so that they actually cook through without getting too brown on the bottom side. At the same time, we don't want it to get too crusty here. Here we go, ready? Count to 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They're beautiful. It's almost like you kind of slice the pancake in half and you reveal the cinnamon right there.
So my idea is cinnamon baked donuts. And the good news is they're baked, not fried. And they're so good. So first I'm gonna do the dry ingredients. 2 cups of flour. I always use all-purpose flour. Just level it off with your hand. 1½ cups of sugar. That should be about a half. Baking powder. I need 2 teaspoons of baking powder. You want them to be really light. I'm just sifting this all together when I'm done combining it. 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. These are really good. And they have a cinnamon sugar outside. It's kind of like cinnamon toast. Jeffrey's gonna like these. And ½ teaspoon of nutmeg. And ½ teaspoon of salt. I'm just gonna sift these all together. I don't know, there's something about cinnamon toast that always reminds me of being a little kid when you're sick and that's what your mother makes you. Makes you feel better. I used to make cinnamon muffins in the store, but cinnamon donuts are even better. So next, the wet ingredients. I've got 1¼ cups of whole milk, and I just whisked in 1 extra large egg. And I've got 2 tablespoons of butter that have melted and cooled. Just pour it together. This is really easy. It's just wet ingredients, dry ingredients, combine them. 2 teaspoons of good vanilla, my favorite flavor. I always mix things in a measuring cup because then you can measure and mix at the same time. And a little whisk is one of my favorite things. Okay, wet ingredients, dry ingredients, just combine them. So I'm just gonna pour this right in the middle and then just stir them. I love this recipe because you don't have to fry the donuts. And then not to mention, it's better for you than fried donuts. But in fact, you don't end up with grease all over the kitchen. So this is gonna go into a baking pan and they're just baked in the oven. So good. Okay, just stir this just enough. It's kind of like muffins, you don't wanna overmix it. Just until all the ingredients are wet and there are no lumps. I can smell the cinnamon and nutmeg, it's fantastic. Okay, that's done. So, baking pans. So they're these little mini donut pans. You can usually find them in a store, but if you can't, you can get them online. And I'm just gonna spoon it into these pans, and they come out looking like the most perfect donuts. You don't need a pastry bag. You don't need a deep fryer. Just fill them with a spoon. So these are gonna bake 350 degrees for 17 minutes until they just spring back when they touch them. And then I'm gonna do a cinnamon sugar glaze for them. Oh, they smell so good. Wow. So the easiest way to get these out of the pan, because you want to do it, have them in one piece, is just kind of wrap them on the board a little bit and then turn them out. And if you're lucky, and I am, they all came out. So just melt some butter, and then I'm going to make cinnamon sugar. The thing about cinnamon sugar is it has to be just the right combination. You don't want it too sweet. And you don't want too much cinnamon in it. If there's too little, it doesn't look like cinnamon sugar. If there's too much, it almost looks kind of burnt. So I find ½ cup of sugar, ½ teaspoon of cinnamon is the perfect combination. So the butter's melted. Perfect. So this is what I do. I take donut and just dip it really quickly into the butter. You don't want to soak it in. You just want to glaze it. Put it in the cinnamon sugar. Now, how good does that look?
They look great.
You want one?
Do I want one?
What a question. They're baked, they're not fried.
Yeah, delicious.
Is that good?
Oh,
Oh, good.